One of the most important parts of the NFL draft process that I've learned is the UDFA process. To me, one of the things I've noticed real quick is that pretty much from the moment the actual NFL draft ends, within 20 minutes, you start hearing big name. Sometimes guys with upside, guys with potential. You start to hear that player X, Y, and Z signed with team X, Y, and Z, and it comes out super quickly. For the Raiders, to be a great team, you have to build through the draft. But it's not just the actual players you pick. When round 6 or 7 come around, you start thinking about the UDFA pool that's most likely going to be available. Truth be told, we almost always get 1 or 2 UDFAs that end up surprising everyone and actually making a roster. They end up having success and becoming good football players. If you don't know this, Jacoby Myers, the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver, was a UDFA. There are so many guys like this around the NFL who are essentially UDFAs, but now starting caliber players. The Raiders signed a bunch of these guys this year, so I'm going to talk about this in today's video. I'm going to talk about some of the UDFAs that the Raiders have already signed. I'm sure there are guys that might be missing or signed after this video is actually posted. In the first 4 or 5 guys, there are a few I really like. Let's start with the guys that I personally really like. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. First up, Jaylen Walker from Indiana. This is a guy that I was actually surprised was not drafted. I do understand why he wasn't drafted, to be honest with you guys. We'll talk about that in a second. But when I watch Jaylen Walker's tape from Indiana, you see a guy that's explosive, fast, quick, and gets after it. The tape doesn't lie with certain guys. You can see it. And yeah, you might say, hey, he was undrafted. How good can this guy actually be? The thing with a guy like Walker is he plays a position that's not really valued in the NFL. Linebacker is a position where teams just aren't drafting these guys. There are strategic reasons for this. Unless there's a guy that's going to go in the first 2 or 3 rounds, teams often hesitate. Outside of that, when you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds, do you really want to commit to a linebacker for 4 years? Or would you rather try to bring in 3, 4, or 5 different guys? If one hits, great. If the others don't, you cut them after 1 or 2 years. There are no ties to the team. No guaranteed money. Looking at the Raiders' current linebackers, you've got guys like Tommy Eichenberg and Amari. Do the Raiders really want these guys? I don't know, but because the Raiders drafted them, they're under contract, they're getting paid money, and to replace them would cost the Raiders money. It's not as simple as saying, hey, let's just cut the bottom 20 guys and replace them with another 20, especially if they're under contract. You can't fill out a roster that way. Understandably, positions like linebacker, guard, and running back don't always end up getting drafted super high. These are positions that are fairly easy to replace and turn over. Jaylen Walker is one of the guys I really like. He's 6 feet 1 inch, 218 pounds, and on the lighter side as a linebacker. He's a former safety converted to linebacker. And we know, right? We had Gus Bradley at one point, who comes from the Pete Carroll tree. Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn come from that same tree as well. These guys love to take former safeties and slot them in at linebacker. And it makes sense. If you've got a safety that's a little bit on the bigger side, slotting him in at linebacker could work. They're faster, quicker, and more explosive. That's definitely what you get with a guy like Walker. This is a guy I like. We'll see if he can actually make the Raiders roster. The Raiders linebackers are in an interesting spot. I do think that we're going to get a lot of guys cut this season who, in past seasons, kind of just stuck around. Let me give you a couple of examples. Guys like Tommy Eichenberg, although we just drafted him, if he doesn't really perform this season. And let's say a guy like Amari, who we brought in last year as a UDFA. He was legit. Let's say Amari ends up outproducing a guy like Tommy Eichenberg, or even Amari. Bernie's been here a little bit longer. Guys like Eichenberg and Bernie could easily get replaced, especially if Jaylen Walker and Amari end up being good football players. Now, considering the fact that the Raiders already brought in Devin White and Elandon Roberts, and considering the fact that we drafted Cody Lindenberg in the 7th round, you can't go into the season with 12 linebackers on the roster, so some guys are going to end up getting cut. One of my favorite pickups for the Raiders is Melo Dodson, a cornerback out of Kansas. This guy reminds me a little bit of Amik Robertson, but not exactly. Dodson is 6 feet 1 inch, 192 pounds with really good size. He had 5 interceptions this past season. This guy can get his hands on the football. Jaylen Walker is a guy I would have thought, based on his tape, would get drafted. But again, he plays the linebacker position, which isn't really valued. Cornerbacks are different. They're generally valued because even if you don't make the actual roster or the starting rotation, you can still play special teams as a corner. You can play gunner, kickoff, or even punt return. Melo Dodson is a really interesting player. His production score of 70 is solid. His 40-yard dash probably held him back from getting drafted. For corners, teams really value speed. They feel that if you're not running in the 4.2 to 4.3 range, you might struggle. And I understand why teams feel this way. For a guy like Dodson, running a 4.59, raises question. Do you have the hip fluidity to stay on top of these wide receivers? Can you go from 0 to 100 fast enough to stick with guys like Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill? Teams value speed at the corner position, and that's part of why he fell. But the good thing for the Raiders is that Lance Zierlein described him as an instinctive outside corner with impressive ball production. Dodson has adequate NFL size and a good feel for reading routes underneath. His instincts and zone coverage skills might help him translate well for the Raiders, especially since they're shifting to a heavy zone scheme. We're seeing this with the players the Raiders are bringing in. Guys who are long, can tackle, are big, and are strong. They're not prioritizing speed or man-to-man guys. It's about switching to a zone scheme, likely a cover 3 scheme. I don't think it'll be as much as what Gus Bradley ran, but cover 3 has its benefits. And it's not always pure cover 3, it's often a cover 3 look that can transition to cover 1 man-to-man defense. That's where safeties converted to linebackers can help. They can handle those deep crosses. Melo Dodson is a guy I personally like. These first two guys, Walker and Dodson, are the ones I think have a real shot at making the Raiders roster. The other guys might just be camp bodies. I watched tape on about 7 of these guys. The back 7 I haven't yet reviewed. Another guy I want to highlight is Joyner, a player out of Minnesota. This guy is interesting because of his pass rush potential. At 6 feet 4 inches, he has size, but he's not the most athletic, and his consistency is an issue. Watching his tape, there are moments where you say, wow, that's a fantastic play, and then other moments where he looks lost. It's a mix of high and low performance, and that inconsistency is probably what kept him from being drafted. However, his pass rush upside is undeniable. For example, he has some nice hand-fighting techniques, like a swipe and rip move or a swim move that flashes on tape. There are times when he bursts through the line, showing the ability to disrupt the quarterback. But then there are other plays where he doesn't show much quickness off the snap. That's why Rob Leonard, the Raiders' defensive line coach, likely handpicked Joyner. Leonard has shown he can develop players who aren't finished products. While Joyner has a lot of work to do, Leonard might see potential that others missed. This approach to identifying and developing talent is evident throughout the Raiders' UDFA class. Take Parker Clements, for instance, a right tackle from Virginia Tech. At 6 feet 7 inches and 303 pounds, Clements has an impressive frame. In 2021, he made Pro Football Focus's All-ACC third team. Last season, he played 13 games at right tackle, logging 734 snaps and helping his team average 178 rushing yards per game. While Clements might transition to guard at the pro level, his size and skill set give him a chance to stick around, at least as a developmental prospect. So these are some of the interesting UDFAs. Considering the video length, I will review all of them in the upcoming video. So, what do you think? Which one is your favorite, and who's gonna make in the make roaster? Share your thoughts in the comment section.